Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when where you live is stricken with tragedy, famine, and violence? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is Life-Jacked, the Resilience Podcast. Life-Jacked is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Qin Sun Stubis, was born in a Shanghai shantytown during the Great Chinese Famine. Her journey is a testament to unwavering determination and resilience. Despite facing immense challenges during her upbringing, Qin defied the odds and carved a path to success through education and perseverance. From being a national tour guide in China to becoming a celebrated writer in America, her story is one of triumph over adversity. In this episode, she will share her remarkable story of resilience and strength. Ni hao, Qin, welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Rowe, and I'm so happy to be on your show. I really have listened to your podcast interviews, and every person is more heroic than the other. So I really feel flattered. I feel honored to be part of your show.
Yes, it's wonderful, and I really appreciate you being a part of my show, and I can't wait for you to share your story with the listeners. So let's get to it. For the listeners out there, could you please just share with them a little bit about you, where you're from, your career, family, all the good stuff?
Fantastic. So I know that it's a little difficult to tell everything, but I'm going to try to do my best. I was born in Shanghai shantytown in 1960. It was in the midst of the greatest famine in the world, killed somewhere between 30 to 50 million people. And life was really hard. The minute I was born, my mother had to leave me in the middle of a wooden hut. It's like an upside-down wooden box my father built, leaning against his parents' bigger hut. And both of my parents had to go to work. So they left me, the little infant, in the crib for the first 2 years of my life. So I was so developmentally delayed that by the age of 2, I failed to speak, to sit, to walk, to talk, anything you can name for a person at the age of 2 to do, I couldn't do. So the reason I had to stay there for 2 years is because the government nurseries, they wouldn't take children younger than 2. So my mother had to go to work, and she dreamed of the time when I turned 2, so she could send me to the nursery. And little did she know that they claimed that I was disabled. They couldn't take care of me. So my mother took me back home. She had to resign from the job and stayed home with me. Of course, it was hard because otherwise she wouldn't have gone to work in the first place. So she had to go through the vegetable vendors in the morning market, beg for kind of spoiled vegetables. The sympathetic vendors were kind enough to give to her so the family could survive. And so that's my earliest childhood. And then I went through the Cultural Revolution. When I was the age of 6, the revolution went through the entire length of my education, from first grade to almost high school graduation. So you would think like, a person like this, how did I manage to get out of the country to become a national tour guide for the Americans? Where did I learn English? how did I get all the education I needed? My mother is my hero forever, even though she's gone like 20 years ago, she was gone. But she always encouraged me to study, to read an extra book. Don't sweep the floor. Don't do the laundry. Don't learn to cook. Read an extra book. She had any money she could spare, she spent on books. We're like 4 girls in the family. Between me and my 3 sisters, we had like a one raggedy doll that we had, but we had a stack of books that we shared, and every night my mother would read to us. She would tell us stories. And so between reading and the family saga storytelling, I grew up educated at home, even though I had 12 years of public education. The public education mostly focused on politics, stuff like that. So I felt that my education was like vital at home. And my mother had an interesting life, so I learned so much about her glorious past, her struggling in life, and how she was given away as a girl and everything, how she got a brother. My grandfather bought a son with gold blocks because he wanted a son so badly. So all these things. Anyway, I ended up, when I was graduating from high school, suddenly China was restoring the college entrance examination. So I went and actually got into one of the most prestigious universities in China called the Shanghai Institute of Foreign Languages. And there I majored in English and English literature. So I studied Shakespeare, Chaucer, Milton, you name it, William Wordsworth, Thomas Hardy. I just grabbed any book I could. So when I first got in, I had very little knowledge of English. It's like, we love our motherland, Chairman Mao is a red, red sun type of English. And then by time 4 years later, I graduated, I could recite Shakespeare sonnets. I actually found Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which I fell in love with, and he was really my idol since the age of 17. I just loved everything. I devoured everything, all the romantic literature. And then I became a tour guide for the Americans in the 1980s. From 1982 to 1987, I received thousands of Americans, busloads of them, and took them from Great Wall to the Gobi Desert to, where the panda bears are, and everywhere around the country. I also did a lot of local tour guiding, during which I met a lot of influential Americans, including Dianne Feinstein when she was the mayor of San Francisco. And anyway, and then when I was about 29 years old, I had a dream. I wanted to go outside the country. I wanted to further my studies. So I took 2 suitcases and myself left China, heading to University of Arizona to get my master's degree in communications. And that's how I landed in America. And from there on, anyway, I ended up getting my degree. I fell in love with a man in New York City, graduated from Juilliard, a classical trained pianist. And we actually have 2 children. And I started to write a newspaper column for about 17 years. And I just loved reading. And from there, I became a writer. And so here I am.
No, absolutely. I love it. Now, I just have to mention that, wow, of course, we just went through the most devastating worldwide pandemic, right, of COVID-19. And I don't even really want to mention it because it's kind of like, wow, I don't want to hear any more stories about the coronavirus or COVID-19. But I couldn't even imagine 30 to 50 million people losing their lives, all because there's a lack of a basic need, which is food. I couldn't even imagine that. Of course, you were an infant at that time, and so I'm sure you
Yes.
didn't really know going on around you, but still, I just couldn't even imagine the strife that everyone was going through at that time. Do you think that your parents, felt that stress and then trying to raise a family as well in that?
Oh, I did not even know how my parents did it. And they, talk about life being jacked. I mean, they really actually started out, they came from pretty good families. My father's life was jacked before he was even born. He actually, my grandmother, who was 19 at the time, believed that it was a wandering spirit who jacked my father's life because he was looking for a host. And he found my grandmother and a baby, and so he jumped into my father. That's why my grandmother believed. And then his family, who was very well-to-do, ended up going through the Japanese War, got his family's factory burned in Shanghai, went from a prestigious family with a chauffeur and a car, and ended up became chattel slaves, and then ended up in the Shantytown. And then my mother's family, too, it was pretty well-to-do, and ended up after liberation, my grandfather, who was general manager of a watch and clock shop, ended up selling soy sauce and the vinegar in a little tiny store. And so, yes, the life is going up and down, just went down and down. So both of my parents went through so much, and yet it was filled with determination. Like you sometimes the darkest moment, you feel like, oh, it's like a forever. It's like a dark hole. You go in there, it goes in, and there's no way. You become despondent. There's no way you can get out. But the darkest moment is also sometimes before the bright moment can come back to you. It's like before dawn is the darkest time of the day. So my parents just kept on hoping. They were filled with love and wishes, and just keep on dreaming and hoping the time would get better, life would get better. And for them, I think that they really had their hopes and wishes set upon the 4 little girls they had. Like there are moments my mother would tell my elder sister, who I was 2, she was 4 years old. My mother would lure her to bed like about 5 o'clock in the evening, so she didn't have to use electricity, didn't have to worry about paying for it. So lure her with like a candy, a tiny little milk candy or 2, and say, just that's the dinner, and you go to bed, and you dream that tomorrow mommy will have white rice and food to feed you. And my older sister would listen, and she would go to bed just like that. Every moment was so dark, and it's for years and years. And of course, during the Cultural Revolution, my father was imprisoned for being against the revolution for 7 years. So he was kept elsewhere. He wasn't even with us when I was growing up for many years. From the age of 8 and on, I used to visit him in the places where he was imprisoned with very, very harsh conditions. He would always, pat you on the head and talk to you gently. You could never see pain and suffering from his face. And then we would go home, and then with no money because he was in the prison, so they wouldn't give him any money. And my mother had no job and no money. So how could we live? 4 little girls. All the relatives and friends left us because they were worried that they didn't want to have any association with us. They were fearful for their own lives. They wanted to protect their own lives. So life was really, really dark.
I see. Now, in all of that, in your childhood, I mean, and even like you said, starting out, and it was believed that you may have been disabled because you didn't develop properly for the first 2 years of your life. But this is why you're incredibly resilient, because there was a pivotal moment that happened in your childhood that helped to shape your perspective on resilience. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Of course, I would share with everyone. I think there is no secret ingredients in that. It's actually all about how to say, you have to realize your resilience really resides, remember, in yourself. Now, if you have doubt about yourself, then it's going to be really, really hard. So for me, probably realizing what a precarious position we were, not when I was born. I had no clue. I was left in the crib, in a soiled bed all day. I didn't know. But when I realized it was during the Cultural Revolution, when my father was sent away, and when all the aunts and uncles, whatever, quote unquote, my father's colleagues and neighbors, suddenly would avoid your eyes and just walk away pretending they didn't even know you on the street. And you realize that your own father's sister would denounce him because she wanted to secure her own future. And it was hard. And you really realize life was tough. The resilience comes partly from my mother's love. I felt that as long as she was there, I would be okay. And so I think when you are in a horrible shape or position, it's extremely important that you have at least one person you can rely on. Sometimes even just the words, encouraging words, a little hug would help you. And my mother had a little, like a wooden suitcase where she kept her old things for memory, like a little silver spoon, a pair of silver chopsticks, a pile of a brocade of fabric she used to make clothes. And eventually, one thing by another, I went to the pawn shop with her. We sold one thing at a time to buy the crucial rice. So if there's nothing else, you can make a pot of porridge. You could have, you couldn't have, have money to buy the charcoal. You can go out and find the sticks and then put a wall of bricks and put some sticks and old paper, and you can light a fire and put your wok on top of it. Luckily, the wok really comes handy. I think the Western style, like a flat pots, will not work as well. For the wok, because it's kind of the lower pointed bottom of it, it gets snuggled among the bricks, and it's very easy. It's easier, let's say that way, to cook things. So we really tried hard to survive, but I still felt that at the time it was so very hard, but I knew that as long as I had my mother, I was going to be okay. Another thing helped me, the resilience, is that I felt that the confidence is extremely important. Now, I had to wear patched clothes to go to school. My toes would be sticking out of my cloth shoes my mother made for me. So I was really, really a raggedy child. And other kids sometimes would tease you, would do horrible things to you, but I had one honor. I always got a higher test score in a class than the other kids. That was my honor badge, that I felt that as long as I can do better than them, it means that I am special. I have some sort of, like a special power. And I think that kind of helped my resilience. So I think it's extremely important. If you feel that you're in a deep, dark hole and not doing well, use your power. What are you good at? If you're good at writing a poem, draw a picture, or do something with your life that eventually might dig you out of the hole, because you can't lose your confidence. You can't lose the love for this life. And as long as you have those, I think no matter where your life is jacked into, I think you will be able to pull yourself out, because I am the testimony of it.
Wow. And now your memoir, Once Our Lives, it has garnered numerous awards and accolades. Congratulations on that. Now, I know most families, yes, I know most families are like, don't share our private moments and our stories and all of that. That's what we keep it in the family. So what inspired you to write down your family stories and experiences and publish them in a book?
Yeah, and especially the Chinese family, we really like to sweep everything under the rug and only put a badge of honor to show to the world how everything is. I think as a result of it, there are tons of memoirs out there, so-called historical, but most of them either fictional or in some ways they would change the names, the dates, the place. They would mix several people's lives together. But I was determined. What happened was my parents passed away one after another. And I felt that I have spent like more than one life in my lifetime, because the Shantytown me is so far removed. I never really thought about my part of life, even during Cultural Revolution. I just wanted to move on. I got married. I fell in love. I have two fantastic children. I'm living an upper middle class life in America. I was not thinking about those things. But when they passed away, it just hurt me so badly, because my parents, my sisters are the closest people in my life. I had a lot of relatives, but yet I had none. I had no friends, and I really felt that losing them, it's like losing the comrades in arms. So I forced myself, the only the way to console myself, I forced myself to look back into the history, the lives that we had, the stories that my mother told me about her past and my father's family and everything. And what happened was, suddenly I came to a revelation that my family was not as ordinary as I thought. My family was not shameful. It was an ordinary family, lived an extraordinary life in anything but ordinary times. And I felt that if I would let that history go, it would be shame on me. I kind of made myself the history carrier. I felt that it was my duty to write it. I owe it to the world, people of the world, because if the ordinary people can do extraordinary things, of all the ordinary people in the world, they all are doing extraordinary things. They may be not aware of it. So my parents were gone. I tried not to think about what my mother would think about, my father would think about. I just decided I would write a real life story about their lives from the very beginning. And so that's how I just felt that I had to write this book, use the passion, the love for history and literature that I have developed by studying Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, whatever, their eloquence, their literacy. I thought they were my idols. But then I realized I wanted to be just like them. I wanted to write. So that's how my book, it took me 20 years to put it together. But the reason is because it was a long writing journey, which, this is not a writing podcast, so I'm not going to get into too much details, but it was a long journey. And also psychologically, I felt that I became objective instead of hating. For instance, my grandfather's mother, who never liked us because we were girls, I started to realize why she was like that through the history with a pair of lens that's called a history, and not through my personal bias. And that's how I wrote my book.
Wow. Well, not only are you resilient, you were incredibly brave, because you moved to America with just 2 suitcases. I know that must have been a significant transition. What was that experience like, moving to America?
That was really, these days, I didn't even know how to say it, because, my son just went to Florida to get his first test of a real job. And I saw that how he looked at me, the way he looked at me, as if like he was never going to see me again. When I left China, I literally did not know if I was ever going to see my parents again. I had 2 suitcases. I thought it was time. It was a time for me to go on an adventure and a journey, because my father just came back home after his second term of the prison time. For another 7 years after the Cultural Revolution, he was being accused of for Cultural Revolution and sent to jail from 1982 to 1987. The entire duration, I was a tour guide. I was the breadwinner for the family, for my mother, for my 4 sisters, for my father in the prison. So when he came out in April, I decided to leave. I left 3 months after he got home. So the interesting thing is that you really have the determination. You feel that if you don't do it, you're never going to do it again. It's like I was 29. All my friends had children, got married, and here I was, wanted to go for an adventure. But all the American tourists loved me. They used to call me China doll, whatever, Miss Shanghai 1982, had a great time. They also taught me about being heroic, about having confidence. I received American tourists. Once there was a man who was blind, and he followed a regular American tour group because he wanted to see China. Everywhere he went, he listened so more attentively than the normal people. He used his hands to touch everything, used his nose to inhale the scent of China. I had once had a man who had no legs. Now, at the time in the 1980s, there were no these legs that are robotic legs. He literally was on a pair of wooden crutches, and he moved along. The sweat was such a large sweat beads just falling off him, but he was determined to see China. That kind of heroism, the American tourists, they were my heroes. They made me realize that if you want to do something, no matter how impaired you were, you can do it. So here I was. I had my limbs, I had my arms and legs. My eyes were clear. I decided I wanted to see America, a country from countries so many people that I have received and who were so nice to me. So anyway, but I was worried. I did not know what's going to happen. So I had a quilt. I thought I might have to stay in a subway in New York City if I had no place to go one day. I had toothbrushes, I had toilet paper, I had everything you can, even think about you would need in life. And so it was hard in the beginning. American life and Chinese life are different because we have different foods. I never had cheese in my life. I never ate raw vegetables in my life. So I thought I didn't want to eat meat. My friends took me out. I was like, how about salad? It's a vegetable. I was shocked to see a huge plate of raw vegetable was brought to me, and I'm supposed to eat. I'm like, I'm a human. I don't eat raw vegetables. I did not know that we could eat raw vegetables. So I have learned so much. But yet, because I had an open mind, I felt that I wanted to, I'm in America, like when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I guess I applied it when in America, do as Americans do. And then I married an American man. So we speak English all day. And my mother-in-law was a blonde and blue-eyed. And I was the only Chinese in that family named Stubis. The family half from Latvia, from my father-in-law side from Latvia. My mother-in-law was born American, but her ancestry was French and English. So my children grew up speaking English. I never taught them Chinese. The reason is because I wanted harmony. I wanted to make sure the family could strike an entire dialogue and there's no missing information or misunderstanding whatsoever. So I just tell you, I am over 60, and half of my life I lived speaking Chinese and entirely 100% made in China. And then the second half of my life, I'm 100% made in America. So that makes me a quite interesting person in some ways. But I think, according to the Asian way, you know how about yin yang? They have this S-shape. Half of it is white and half is black. And inside the black is a little white dot, and inside the white half there is a black dot. It's actually a perfection. I really feel very happy. I'm a very happy person because I felt that I am the very badge of that yin-yang symbol.
I love that. And I thought about greeting you and saying ni hao when I first said hello to you. But I didn't know, if that would have been okay or not. So I don't know a lot of Chinese, but I know it's a
No,
little
you
bit
can. Yes,
yes,
you can say ni hao. And I remember teaching American tourists how to say ni hao, how are you? I used to point at their knee. I say ni hao. And so that's how they learn ni hao. Yes. It was interesting. I taught them quite a few words, but I didn't try to teach them Chinese because it was impossible for them to learn, including my own name, Qin. Is it like Qin? Nobody, no Westerner in their right mind would think about the Qin is a word. So after a couple of tours, I realized that would be too hard for them. So I started to use my surname, which is S-U-N, Sun. So most of the American tourists knew me as Sun. They call me Sunny, Miss Sunshine, because I thought that Sun is a word that I would correspond to because I know it's my family name. And also it's so easy for the Americans. I used to tease them. I said, what did like when Shakespeare said, the eye of heaven, what did they mean? They say, Sun. I say, yes, that's my name. So that was kind of fun.
Yes. So we don't realize, like you said, that America and China is so different. And with you coming to America and realizing, like you said, eating vegetables, raw vegetables in a salad. And, I just had a salad today. It's like second nature. That's what we do in the United States. I didn't realize that it's foreign, a foreign food that's unique to us. But your writing is known for infusing both Eastern and Western influences. So how do you feel that each of these unique cultures help you create your literary voice?
Well, I think what is fun about it, I felt it, what my understanding about America is very unique because not that I judge America by using the China standard, but I almost feel that I'm like the lady blindfolded with two scales in my hands. One is China, one is America. I can see both sides. Not that one is better than the other, but how one and the other are being compensated together. And it will help us to understand the entire world together. Because the world is not made of America. The world has the east side and the west side. America is part of the West, and China is part of the East. Now, like Japan, Korea, a lot of the Asian countries, they all share Buddhism, Hinduism, all sorts of more Eastern beliefs, while the Western culture have more the Western beliefs. So understand a little bit of it will help us, a little bit of each will help us to really put the world together. So when I write, I try to from almost like make sure whatever I write, I always feel I wanted to prepare. Like when you go to people's home, the Asian people, they like to leave you with a pair of slippers for the guests. You have to take off your shoes, and then you have to wear a pair of their slipper, to walk inside the house. But I feel like what I want to do is whenever doing writing, I wanted the Westerners to be able to step into their pair of shoes that the Asian people prepared for you. So when you read the story, Asian culture, Asian story, Asian lives, you actually can digest it. You can actually understand what's going on, the dynamics, the culture, and so even though you're a Westerner, but you can understand it. I'm kind of giving you a prepared version with a pair of spectacles that you would be able to actually look into and understand Eastern culture more. The same way as when I write about Eastern culture, Western culture to the Eastern people, I wanted them to be able to see America a little bit more clearly, what America is, just kind of infusing the two cultures and the understanding of one from the other, I think is very, very important. And I think when you do that, when people read your writing, it's almost like I want to build a bridge of humanity. I wanted people to be able to read my words and then understand a deeper meaning of humanity. For instance, the Chinese people are known, people go, oh, they are always so overconfident. All their kids go to Ivy League schools. Like Asian people never die and they all make a lot of money. They never had a trouble, which is far from the truth. The same far from the truth that every Asian woman is a tiger mother. And, things like that. But I wanted through my reading, people understand Asian people, the Chinese people, are just like all the other people. When it's war, we go through the same as the people anywhere in the world would feel. And when we go through famine, our stomach tightens and we grow skinny, we become bones, and we can die, just like people from all over the world. And it's just a part of the humanity. I feel that these days there's a hating of one race over the other, but we are all the same. It doesn't really matter if a strawberry is blue or yellow or red or white. If it's in the shape of a strawberry, it's a strawberry. It tastes like strawberry. So human beings, we are all human beings. We're made of flesh and blood. We comrades together in a sense that we all have to understand each other. We have to help each other, make our life in this world, as loving, as nice as possible. That's what I feel, what I want my literature to be.
I love that. And education has played a crucial role in your journey. And as an educator myself, hats off to your mother for that. So how did learning and knowledge empower you when you look back over your life?
I think possibly that's the only reason I am where I am today is because of education. I was very, very fortunate to have a mother who didn't ask me to do housework and other things. Like most of the people at the time, girls, you're going to get married one day. What do you need an education for? But my mother actually, she was from a good family, but her parents would not let her go to school because a proper girl should not be sitting among the other kids, especially boys. They shouldn't raise their voice. So my grandfather at the time was the general manager of the watch and clock shop in the old British section of Shanghai. He was the general manager of a watch and clock shop called Wellington. This is how westernized he was. They were converted into Christianity from Buddhism by their Western friends. And yet he was very conservative in some ways because he wouldn't let my mother go to school. And my mother wanted to go to school, and she never could. My grandfather tutored her, and her awards were getting gold watches, like the most recent model of a gold watch. That was her present at the time. But she always wanted to go to school. And then when she was older, she actually went and studied in the Shanghai Film School and graduated. She was doing plays, acting plays on the stage, and she was invited to go to the Shanghai Film Studio and became an actress. But her adoptive mother was struck by TB and was dying, so she had to give up her work and stayed home until the mother died 3.5 years later. So I think my mother wanted us to fulfill her unfulfilled dream and wishes of learning and education. So I thought I was very lucky for that. And the education and doing well in school was my only pride. So And it also helped me because the national entrance examination for college was restored. And it was just not that hard for me to do it really, really well. And I remember the pride when I got accepted by the wonderful college. And I always have a yearning for education, for learning. And I got my master's degree in the United States. I mean, my son just got his PhD in mathematics, theoretical mathematics. And I'm so envious of him because I felt that I would have loved to have a PhD, like you, Dr. Rowe. So, but, I do as much as I can, but it's the education that opened my eyes about what is right, what is wrong. It's the education that helped me to understand that I am an earthling, and I'm not going to be confined by the border of a country. I can understand my environment. I love people, to observe people, to understand people around me. I just felt that education means knowledge. Knowledge is what makes us smart and makes us very capable of understanding our position and how to make contribution to the world. It tells right from wrong. And it's all about the knowledge. I mean, the correct knowledge, the knowledge that you can find from books across the history, not just the knowledge from one book, because the book could be biased. But if you read far and wide in different languages through different centuries, you really realize a lot more. You understand the whole picture of humanity, not just to read a magazine now, but if you read Shakespeare, you read Spencer, Chaucer, Milton, all these different, Jack London, you really start to get a larger picture of the world. And I think that it does help in which, in all the things you read, you extract eventually its essence of knowledge. You get to kind of learn so much. And that's why I feel that the whole point of being a person here on earth and have our life. And it's such a precious thing because it's a journey that will never be repeated. It doesn't matter what you believe, whether you believe afterlife or not afterlife. Even if you believe in afterlife, this life is so important. If you don't take care of it, what's the point of having another life anyway? If you don't believe in another life, then this life is even more precious, right? So I think it's so important to read, to study, to understand not your own thoughts, but other people's thoughts and ideas that will make you more objective and understand the world and the people.
Looking back at your incredible life journey, what message or legacy do you hope to leave for future generations through your writing and storytelling?
I felt that the reason that I wrote the book for people, anyone who wants to read it. I think I want everyone always to remember that no matter how horrible position you're in, you can get out of it. And once you're getting out of it, you look back at it and you will realize it's the hardest part of your life that it teaches you the most. It's not when you're having a fun time. Now that my life is so stable, I have a home, I have a roof over my head, I have a loving husband, 2 great children, and an adorable dog. And I feel like my life is very fulfilling. But the more things I learned when my life was really, really hard. When I was living the real hard life, I felt I almost couldn't make it. I felt the humiliation. I felt that sometimes I was despondent. But now looking back, I won't change my life with anybody. Because you know why? It was that part of the life that has taught me so much, including how to take pressure and often me that nothing is that important. It's very important to understand that with the most precarious moments of our life, it's the time of testimony. It is the time to really test us, how strong we are. And we don't want to be, we don't want to fail the test. We want to really feel ourselves we can do it. We can get out of the mess. No matter the mess was created by you, have anything to do with you. But how to get out of it is always a challenge. And I felt that when people read my works, I hope it would give them the courage and hope that they too can get out of anything. And it will make them braver. It will make them a true fighter. It will really make them special. It's like, even the most precious stone, people think about a diamond, so perfect and precious, but the origin of the diamond, how it became a piece of diamond, the process itself is nothing to be glorified. We have to temper ourselves. We have to really find every way to fight for our existence. When we realize that, then when you have a good life, you can truly enjoy it. So I really hope that everybody, all the listeners out there, that you really, really understand life, an easy life is not fulfilling. A true fulfilling life has its very difficult parts. And when you go through and you overcome those difficult parts, and then when you have a good life, your life truly becomes fulfilling. That's what I feel.
In your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
I think the best way to build resilience resilience is not something we can add into ourselves. It's like a slow building from moment to moment, a realization when you have gone through a hard period and suddenly you realize that you can do it. You have just overcome something big. And that kind of gradually type of understanding build into you and make you stronger. And the next time when you have a moment of, hard moments in life, and you then how to incorporate what you have learned and then overcome something even bigger. And the resilience is also not all about you. It's about those people around you. If you have a support group of people around you, you can help the others more resilient. The others can make you more resilient. And in some way, in a compounded way, it actually makes both of you even stronger. So I think in life, what I feel is it's important not to be alone. Find a bosom friend. There are tons of people out there feeling lonely just like you. Find someone who are similar to you. Fight this life together. Share a glass of wine or share some tears on each other's shoulder. That is very important. I think when you're alone, sometimes in a lonely moment, a sudden feeling of being lost, forlornness, it could hit you really hard and not to think clearly. But when that kind of moment, imagine you share with someone and people, can give you ideas. You can give them ideas. Suddenly that really bad moment may not be that bad after all. So, building resilience, I think even being a parent, it is important to teach your children about resilience. I think you can't have someone everything, I want everything has to be perfect. And you live the first 30, 40 years of life like that. And then if you meet with something really, really hard, and it will truly hit you hard. But it's just being a child. You give a child some daily challenges, little by little. Things are not going your way, but don't try to make it up. Make sure the kids always get their everything. Like, oh, I want a happy child. I want to spoil my child. Also think about how to make your child more resilient. And so one day, when you're not there with them, they wouldn't be able to kind of defend themselves. They wouldn't be able to understand how to cope with situations. I think it's very important.
Well, Xing, 谢谢. I really appreciate you. Please take the time to let everyone know how they can get a copy of your book, Once Our Lives.
Once Our Lives is available Amazon, in bookstores, a lot of independent bookstores, online, Barnes & Noble, and bookshop.org. And you can, first of all, go on Amazon, and if you type in my name, Qin Sun Stubis, or Once Our Lives, and you can even try to read a free episode of it and see how much you like it or not, and enjoying the free reading, because it's a very interesting beginning of the story. I told the story of how my father was born. Before he was even born, his, essentially life was already jacked by some mysterious force. So it would be fun. And then if you're interested, you can get a copy. And I would be very, very happy if you rate and review my book when you're done with it. I have been actually doing a lot of, book clubs as well. So if anybody, all the audience listeners out there interested, if you belong to a book club and you read about my book, I will be very happy to join a Zoom meeting and talk to you guys about my book. And I also, if it's local in the Washington metro area, I will be more than happy to join actually the meeting and talk about my book and about the history. And I think, the reason I named Once Our Lives is because I feel it's a very nostalgic feeling. The book, Once Our Lives, tells the story of 4 generations of Chinese women struggling during war, revolution, and also they struggled against an ancient Chinese superstition which haunted the family for almost 100 years. It's also a story about the love of a young man who bears a beggar's fate, and a woman of my mother who actually had 3 family names. And it's a quite an interesting book. They're ordinary people, as I said, but they had an extraordinary life. So it's a really a piece of recorded history with real people's names and real lives and real history and real life stories.
I love it. Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Well, I really love your show, Life Jacked, because I feel that in everyone, almost no matter you're rich or poor, you're Westerner, Easterner, you're modern day people, or you're Shakespearean time people, life has a way of tricking us, taking us to places where we don't want to be. And when we are kind of positively surprised, we are very happy. Like, yay, guess what? I had a surprise. I won this prize or won the lotto. I did something great. Now, when the surprise is bad, it could be horrid. It could ruin your entire life. Or you could say, this is a challenge. Let me take on the challenge and let me figure out a way how to get out of it. Life is a game. Sometimes, people just love games. When you're in a game, you're in a horrible situation, in a dungeon. When you try to get your way out, now this is real life. You certainly should use 10 times the energy. Try to get yourself out of the dungeon, no matter what that dungeon is made of. And because once you're out, your path will be filled with sunshine again. So that's part of our life, right? Without having a bad moment, our life would be so smooth that it would be like tasting water. And in some ways, that it's all these moments of sudden things that happen to us. It's the life is putting all sorts of spices and herbs into our bowl of water, and it makes life tastier because through those unanticipated moments, unanticipated events, we learn so much about the life, about the nature of the life, about humanity, about ourselves. We may realize a lot of things. Otherwise, we would have understood about the nature of human beings, about our own nature, or about anything and everything.
Well, Shane, I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Thank you for being a guest. Please take care.
Thank you so much.
You have just listened to Life Jacked, the Resilience Podcast with your host, Dr. Rowe. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Pandora, Spotify, and any other podcast streaming platform. Remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.